The Breakfast Club, bitches.
All right, Charlamagne, please tell me, why was I your donkey of the day?
Hold on, let me sip this damn medicine. Let me tell you something, boy. Them medicine balls from Starbucks be slapping, you hear me? Donkey of the day for Friday, March 3rd, goes to State Representative Paul Sherrell. Now, Paul was in a House Criminal Justice Committee meeting Tuesday discussing an amendment to a bill that would allow death row inmates to be executed with a firing squad. Yes. A method that is currently not allowed in Tennessee. Now, needless to say, Paul Sherrell is with it. All right, he wants the death by firing squad, even though it's clearly a method of execution that's cruel and unusual. All right, even in my home state of South Carolina, a Richland County court ruled back in December that both electrocution and the firing squad violate the South Carolina Constitution because the state constitution bars methods of execution that are cruel, unusual, or corporal, and the court found both methods are cruel, unusual, and corporal. But this is what Paul wants in Tennessee, okay? This isn't all he wants. See, Paul is old school, all right? He was born in 1959, 5 years before the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was implemented. The reason I'm bringing that up is because what do you think he was hearing as a young child in Tennessee from the older people around him during that time? Would you like to guess? What do you think his father, his grandfather, what do you think they was instilling in young Paul's head? Do you think they was telling him about the good old days when lynching was a public spectacle, a celebration of white supremacy? It sure sounds like it, okay? Because Paul not only wants to see death by firing squad implemented, he added something else to the menu. Let's go to News Channel 5 Nashville for the report, please.
All right, it's February 28th. Welcome to the Criminal Justice Full Committee.
It was a typical meeting on Capitol Hill that quickly turned to a very atypical topic surrounding death row inmates and how they're executed.
The opportunity to add a firing squad as a method of execution.
The suggestion of a firing squad in the wake of several failures from the State Department of Correction to properly follow protocol when executing prisoners using lethal injection, leading to questions not usually heard on Capitol Hill.
Will a person be shot in the head or the heart, or where will a person be shot?
But then came the comment prompting an apology tonight. It came from Republican Representative Paul Sherrell from Sparta.
Thank you, Representative Powers, for bringing this. I think it's a very good idea. Could I put an amendment on that? It would include hanging by a tree also.
Jesus. Could I put an amendment on that? It would include hanging by a tree also. Damn. 7 trees bearing strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the polar trees. Hanging! That good old American pastime. As I said before, lynching was a celebration. Okay, and from 1882 to 1968, 4,743 lynchings occurred in the U.S., according to records maintained by NAACP. And black people were the primary victims of lynching. Okay, 72%. 72%, I repeat, 72% of the people lynched were black, but they weren't the only victims of lynching. Okay, some white people were lynched for helping black people or for being anti-lynching. And for the record, there were 236 lynchings in Tennessee between 1877 and 1950, according to the Equal Justice Initiative. Those are not so fun facts. Well, fun probably for people in Paul Sherrell's family. I'm sure he was told about the good old days, the good times they had at lynchings, and he would love to bring black tradition. He would love to bring back tradition. Okay, well, tradition for you is trauma for us, Paul. Now, Paul did apologize. Let's go back to News Channel 5 Nashville for the report, please.
Tonight, Sherrell apologized in a statement released from the House Republican caucus, saying, "I regret that I used very poor judgment in voicing my support of a colleague's bill, and my exaggerated comments were intended to convey my belief that for the cruelest and most heinous crimes, a just society requires the death penalty in kind." He goes on to say, "My intention was to express my support of families who often wait decades for justice. I sincerely apologize to anyone who may have been hurt or offended."
Tonight, the Tennessee State Conference of the NAACP responded, saying in part, Representative Sherrell's comment is beyond disgusting. He is celebrating a particular form of execution used against African Americans in Tennessee and across the nation, including innocent and wrongfully convicted persons. In many parts of the South, lynchings took place in nearly every county as it exemplified racialized and anti-black violence.
He just apologized because he said it out loud. Okay? Remember about 6 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, probably a little longer, when President Obama was in office and, we thought we was living in a post-racial America and there was these conversations about old bigots dying. All right? Some people would ask the question. Some people would make a statement, but basically the sentiment was racism will end when old bigots die. I don't think anyone ever thought racism would disappear completely, but that it would maybe lessen with each generation. Some people, to the chagrin of Dr. Umar, thought the more interracial relationships that popped up and the more biracial children there are, the more equality we would see. I never agreed with that because you can be biracial, but if you present as black, you are indeed still nigga. And some people thought the more people of color we see in positions of power, it will help to change the way people see race. Well, we had a black president, a black and Asian vice president. We got people of color on the Supreme Court, all throughout Congress. All I'm saying is there's people of color in positions of power everywhere now, but I don't feel racism lessening, okay, at all, especially when you have people like Paul Sherrell in positions of power in their respective states. Like, hearing Paul asking to add hanging to that amendment doesn't surprise me in the least bit. Nope, doesn't surprise me at all, simply because in the words of Thanos, as long as there are those that remember what was, there will always be those that are unable to accept what can be. Tradition for you is trauma for us. Please let Chelsea Handler give Paul Sherrell the biggest hee-haw.
Hee-haw! That is way too much Dan mayonnaise.
I ain't hear the hee-haw now. Let me hear that hee-haw.
Hee-haw!
There you
Hee-haw! That is way too much Dan mayonnaise.
All right. Well,
Hold on now. Kathy Griffin want to say something.
Please give this giant jar of mayo the biggest hee-haw.
What else you got?
Chris Rock performing live in Baltimore tomorrow for the first ever Netflix special stand-up that's going to be live.
Cracker-ass cracker.
And you going to hear that tomorrow night. Okay, I've seen that set a couple times. Matter of fact, play it again one more time, Chris Rock.
Cracker-ass cracker.
That's right. What about my girl? My girl working this morning?
Cracker.
Okay.
Jesus.
Okay. Just making sure.
All right.
Everybody's up.
All right. Well, thank you for that donkey today.
Donkey Today is brought to you by the law office of Michael S. Lamonsoff. Don't be a donkey. Dial pound 250 on your cell and say the bull if you've been hurt in a construction accident. That's pound 250 from your cell and say the bull.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.